All right, we'll go ahead and get started today. Thanks everyone for agreeing to sit in during your lunch hour and join us. This is the April version of the Inbound Lunch Bunch. So just a kind of a quick note, celebratory measure. It seems that this program has been online for about a year. So if you started with us earlier, kind of last year, certainly you can see the transition as we moved from, I believe it was like a in-person event, if you will, to something that's evolved a little bit into a virtual monthly meeting. So thanks for taking the journey with us. It's exciting to kind of see a program, see kind of how it evolves over the course of the year. So I think we've produced quite a bit of material. Likely there's a lot of material that either, we could dig in deeper. So expect to have us kind of explore some of the topics that we've gone through in the past, but perhaps take a couple of elements and dig further into them. So this month we'll be talking about digital advertising to attract new customers. So something that I think is definitely of interest, especially if you are being tasked as a marketer to generate leads. Speaking of which, just to kind of introduce myself, some of you may know me already. You heard me on other webinars. I started with HighRoad about 2 months ago. So I am the Director of Inbound Marketing practice inside of HighRoad Solutions. I bring a number of years of experience just in digital marketing. So back in the day when we were talking about websites and really heavy in website strategy, content strategy, and kind of moving into field marketing and social media strategy as well, right? So all those things in between, I happen to cover all of those pieces. So what I really enjoy doing is talking about lead generation. It's a very exciting time, I feel, in the association world. It's definitely seen that transformative, digital transformation is starting to happen, right? So I think as a whole, organizations as a whole are kind of accepting that we have to have all these digital properties out there. It's no longer so much about the technology, but really about, the skills and figuring out kind of what your marketing portfolio looks like and what do you need to do. So what's nice is that, we're starting to kind of see some of those marketing practices that have been out there. They're really kind of floating up to the surface, specifically lead generation and how it translates to and maps to member acquisition and then all the activities that are around member retention. Right, so exciting time. There's lots of things happening, so I'm happy to be here. So if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to explore, certainly feel free to reach out to me as well via LinkedIn or Twitter. We're always looking for ideas, and we always want to have our finger on the pulse of what kind of challenges that you're faced with as marketers inside of the association, and kind of what are the things that you're looking to have. So some housekeeping items, kind of as usual, brown bagging it, so informal and loose. At some point, it'll be a little bit more interactive. We are excited that we have some new interactive features that are on Zoom. So I believe now you'll have the ability to post some questions via chat or ask some questions directly into the application. I think in the future, we'll probably be talking a little bit more kind of on an interactive level where we could do a Q&A session, we can do a panelist discussion. So certainly, stick with us. We'll be trying a couple of different ways in which to share some knowledge transfer, do some of those things. As always, I think most people are familiar with what we do, especially when it comes to content creation. We have a number of resources that are available for you, so certainly feel free to tap those. The recorded sessions from a year ago are available on demand, and we have a number of toolkits that you may find useful as we kind of go through some of these topics. Right? So every month, if we talk about a topic, there is more than likely a toolkit that Demand Metric and that we work together with Demand Metric to kind of put out. And so there are definitely a lot of toolkits that you can use. So I know one thing kind of as a marketer, we hate, inventing stuff from scratch. It takes so long. So, if there's something out there, certainly use it to your advantage. So, you have a starting point from which to start and keep going. Another reminder, the Demand Metric is still has a survey, the benchmarking study. It's the State of the Digital Association Market. It's still open. We certainly encourage you to participate if you can and answer those questions. So I was looking through some of the data and some of the trends in 2014 and 2015, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2016. And we often rely on some of that data kind of to start discussion points in some of these sessions. So certainly please feel free to go ahead and fill out that survey. All right, so as always, right, in this session, we start with a little bit of a refresher. And since this is the inbound lunch bunch, we'll go back to our inbound marketing diagram, our methodology here. So when we're talking about digital advertising to attract new customers, right, and we're talking about this from, the inbound methodology framework. So it's the first three sections. We're looking for strangers, looking at to figure out how to capture those strangers, the people who don't know us at all. They don't know anything about our brand, or maybe they do. Again, they're kind of unknown quantity. We're looking to capture them. We're looking to provide information so that they turn into visitors and, visit our digital properties wherever we put them out there, and then figure out a way in which to turn them into leads, turn them into kind of put out additional marketing hooks so that they feel compelled enough that they'll return, they'll participate or engage with us a little bit further, and then, we kind of work them down that funnel, if you will, so that they can become customers and advocates of our brand and our organization, right? So the big challenge when it comes to marketing is always about those strangers. So where are they? So in some cases, we know where they are, right? And we kind of do everything we can to get in front of them and provide compelling information. In some cases, we don't know. So it's a little bit of a fishing expedition, right? So you can see some of these vehicles that the inbound methodology is referenced: the blog, social media, keywords, pages, calls to action, landing pages, forms, and contacts, right? So that's all the data points as well as the outreach, the hooks that we're looking to kind of connect with in some capacity, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do that can naturally optimize those, and then there are a lot of things that we kind of want to rely on from a digital advertising perspective, right? So again, I always like to go back to definitions. So digital advertising, also known as internet marketing, I think it's been called a lot of different things, right? But a couple of things that are characteristic. And I found these examples on the web as I was searching for it, is the use of additional technologies to reach and convert leads into customers and retain them. So I particularly like this one because it acknowledges right away that you do digital advertising to reach and convert leads, right? You're not doing digital advertising, let's make that distinction now, we're not doing it for member retention. We are doing it for member acquisition. And it becomes very clear, right? And hopefully you're able to kind of separate that, put that into your goals, into your buckets, because then you can justify the spend that you're going after and then hopefully the return on it, right? So we really want to get specific that digital advertising in particular, is really about looking for those leads wherever they are. So we're looking to reach them, where you're looking to take those strangers, turn them into visitors, and then in turn, convert them into leads. And that's really our focus. So it's all acquisition, it's less about retention. And then organizations, they level another kind of definition or some characteristics. It's when organizations leverage web technologies to deliver promotional advertisements to consumers. So again, it's really kind of highlighting again, it's the way in which we promote things that we are doing that will resonate with these strangers, with these prospects or these consumers, so that they in turn will interact with us and we have an opportunity to bring them down our funnel. So these technologies are all over the place, right? We've got social media, email, search engines, banner ads, mobile sites, websites, so, kind of across the board. And I think this is what's nice now is that it's a reliance on technology, but technology is not going to give you the lead. It's really the vehicle and the way in which you use it to outreach, right? So it's really, it's nice because you have a lot of different options. I think before you were really limited. Advertising, even digital advertising kind of in its infancy was really limited kind of in vehicles and just the way in which you could craft a message and put it out there. So it's nice to kind of see that evolution and what that change looks like. So as I said, so digital advertising is used to grow leads. We're looking to generate leads and obviously grow our revenue. So the big question, right? So this is a question that I'm sure that, as marketers, you already intuitively know, this is what the question is. Likely you'll hear from your management, from your executives, from your leadership teams, but essentially, how do you generate those leads, right? And so, it starts with the basics. You need a really good offer, or a call to action. You need something that is compelling enough so that a person who doesn't really know you that well, from a brand perspective, they've never heard of you, but they have that pain point, as we know as part of that inbound methodology, so they have that pain point that we're here to solve for them, right? So we have something that's very compelling enough for them to take a look at it and perhaps further interact with us. So obviously then, after we have that offer, we need a way to digitally connect all of your properties to work together, right? So again, going back to the screen before, we had social, we had email, we had websites, we had a blog, we had mobile applications as well, right? So all of the properties that you have sitting out there, regardless of what they are, they need to work in tandem. So, again, we're seeing definitely a lot more synergy kind of in this aspect and feedback from the field. Everyone's recognizing that, just because it's on the web page doesn't mean that's it, right? So you can't have, your website does, a bulk of the heavy lifting. It has a presence it needs to, right? But now you're supporting it with all your other digital vehicles out there, right? If you have a lot of materials out on LinkedIn, if you use SlideShare, if you use YouTube, right, in particular, right, all those things kind of are additive. There's no one thing now. There's no one technology or platform that is the all-encompassing. If I do it in here, it takes care of everything, right? And I think that's a recognition, right? So when you have your good offer, you need to make sure that all your properties that are sitting out there, wherever they might be in whatever capacity, they're all working together in tandem. If you have a promotion if you have an offer that you need to promote, you want all of those pieces optimized for you, right? So it's no longer, as I said, about the platform. But the biggest challenge, right, and this is what drives marketers, this is what keeps us up at night as well, is how do you get in front of people who don't know you, right? It's one thing if somebody should happen to stumble onto you by doing a search in the website, but that would rely on them. You have to rely on them, right? You have to hope that somebody would go into a search engine, right, or type up in a browser window or something, online certification for marketers, right? You'd have to hope that somebody would do that. So it's rather passive. And, obviously there's a timeline tied to that. So really, this is your biggest challenge, right? So how do you get in front of people? And, I think there's a little bit of a stigma, if you will, about buying ads, buying advertising. It's too much of the sell, it's tied to a budget, it's like, it's a lot of spend and no return, right? There are a lot of things that, perhaps may prevent us kind of that knee-jerk reaction of like, no, I don't want to go there. But that's the reality, right? So the reality is that you need to kind of have all your digital properties that are out there working for you, and you also need to consider buying advertising. So what's nice now, digital advertising is all about context, right? And which is great for associations because you create all the context for your content that you put out there for your members or your potential members. You're not like a CPG that's got a very commoditized product that everybody has, right? Like you're not a company that creates iPhone case covers. They're one and the same. So you have to really kind of figure out, I have one image, I have one logo, that's all I have to work with. Where am I going to put all my buys? Where am I going to put all my ads? Right? So you deal in content. You specialize in content and programs, specifically programs. Everything you say about those programs can be adjusted and made in context for wherever you're kind of putting your advertising. So suddenly, the world opens up for you from a digital standpoint. So really, I kind of use this image here about the billboard. For many, many years we've been like, don't do that, that's terrible, right? But think about it again. Your challenge is to get in front of people who've never heard of you, who don't know anything about you. So you have to think about where and what can I do to kind of to handle that balance, right? What can I do essentially to get in front of all those people? So there's the paid versus the unpaid advertising. Kind of split, if you will, especially when you're talking about your digital portfolio. It's a corporate term. Digital agencies use this as well, above the line and below the line. And really it's tied to, it's tied to that balance sheet, right? And I think that's where it comes from. Above the line is everything that you put money and spend for specifically, right? So it's like paid media. If you're doing a TV run, if you're doing a print run, if you're running events and you're doing major sponsorships, things like that. Everything that you put in there is kind of your money and your focused spend above the line. Below the line is kind of more along your investments, things that you already have, in place, right? So if you were to spend money, if you're spending money on the website as a platform, right? The website as a vehicle, you're putting in features, additional features, you're perhaps upgrading, right? That kind of spend, is considered below the line, right? So it's kind of like the additive effect, right? But they both work together. Right, so you can see now you have all the below the line activities that have to do with the website, everything that you do on social media, right? And blogs, SEO, search engine optimization, all those kind of fit into these two categories, above the line and below the line. You can see how they're connected here. So if you were to simply ignore above the line and just work with below the line, right? So you've got a website, you've got all your social media vehicles out there, you are following best practices, right? You are doing everything you can on email marketing, you are optimizing everything, you've got a blog that's fully functional and that's really leveraging all of its keywords, and everything's working really well. It's still, you're moving at a pace, which is a good pace, but it's a slow pace. Right, it's a little bit passive because, again, if you're relying on having the SEO work for you, so one, you constantly have to make your edits, right? You're reliant on Google and Bing search engines, their algorithms. You have to wait for them to index your content so that you float up to the, higher on the list, right? So a lot of this is you doing a lot of effort, to maintain, right, to kind of be at that field, be at that level, but you're not able to influence as much the number of people who come to you. Right? So that's why you shift to the above the line. So it's not to say it's all or nothing. It should never be all or nothing. You should never put, all your money into above the line and just ignore, your website and say, you know what, from a budgetary standpoint, we put everything into the ads and the media blitz or whatever, that's it. Right? So, and I think that's obvious, right? But we kind of want to make that distinction, is to say that we want to kind of go for that in between. So we want to use everything that you do from an above the line perspective and use it to amplify or accelerate or expand your reach. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So that's really kind of what I would like you to do, is to kind of start thinking about how you categorize some of your activities that you do. So it's very likely you do some sort of digital advertising, right? So I think it's very unusual for people to do nothing, right? So I think that's fair. I think what we want you to do, or what really kind of the purpose of today's session, is not necessarily like to show you how to go about doing this stuff, but really kind of to make sure that you're aware of all the things you could do. Right, so with technology being like the big equalizer now, there are a lot of things that are available to us as marketers that have changed kind of in the past couple of years, right? So it's very recent. It happens at a much more faster rate than we're used to. I attended the Digital Now conference that's put on by Fusion Productions. It was hosted in Orlando last week. The theme of the show was, pretty much about the rapid pace of change and, kind of viewing it as an opportunity rather than as a threat. So one of the sessions that was at this conference had to do with someone from Twitter. A Twitter representative actually was on site and gave a speech about really kind of the way in which Twitter is now used to drive advocacy efforts. And so I took a little screenshot of something that was put on the screen, and this was Twitter talking about their actual live reach. Right, so Twitter, again, is very real time. Right? Everything about it is real time, immediate. So you really kind of, as a marketer, you want to plan out your campaigns. If you are doing campaigns, you want to kind of leverage, it's very much the grassroots, tapping into the grassroots, what their pulse is, and then taking action upon things that are happening in real time and seeing if you can kind of have those not only float to the surface, but kind of, ride that wave. Right? So what they were trying to show and demonstrate here is look at the extent of their reach. Right, they've got in the logged-in estimate of 300 million. The logged-out estimate is 500 million, and then through syndication efforts with all their partners and whatnot, the reach is 700 million. Right, so if you think about it from that standpoint, if you have an audience of 700 million, doesn't it make sense to have some sort of paid digital advertising in that arena? So now we're talking about taking your cause, taking your campaign, taking your programs, and putting it in front of a potential audience of that much reach. So that's not to say that everything, I'm not saying that everything you have to offer will be relevant to all 700 million accounts, right? That's not the case. But we are talking about statistically some numbers, right? So it's like an influential bump, right? So even in the 700 million, you're likely to find a higher proportion of people that you can target to that you would not be able to do or not be able to get in front of if you were not using some of their paid digital advertising vehicles. So really that's the point, right? So it's not to say it's all or nothing. It's not to say that you have to do one thing or another, but it's really kind of saying that everything that you are doing kind of as a best practice today, that's fantastic. It needs to be amplified. And the way to amplify it, to generate those leads, to get in front of people that you don't know, is to invest in digital advertising. So again, I talked about the state of the digital marketing study that's happened for the past 2 years, and it's still open. The survey is open for this year as well. So what's interesting in this, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2016. But if you look, what it says is that essentially the top 5 digital marketing approaches are unchanged year to year, right? The top 5 are still email, newsletters, Facebook, Twitter, Google Analytics, and your website with dynamic content. That's great. So if you think about like your goals and what you've been tasked with, you look at those and you're like, that's great. I can probably classify all of these into my below the line activities, and they all go towards member retention. So what about member acquisition? Member acquisition, if I'm looking at this, what kind of digital marketing vehicles could I use in my portfolio to kind of drive that? And it is all the way kind of, it starts to kind of go in there, but it's at the bottom. Selling of banner ads, not the same, right? Landing pages with dynamic content, sure, banner ad purchases, okay, that's at 32, 34%, right? But look at the ones that have the most potential. And those are the ones Facebook paid advertising, which is interesting, and then LinkedIn paid advertising, which is even less. Now, to say that's interesting, because certainly in kind of observations from the field so far, most of the associations that we work with have kind of reported back that Facebook is great for just a branded presence. You know, same thing with Twitter. LinkedIn is kind of where all our people are at, right? LinkedIn is kind of where our current members are at, and we suspect LinkedIn is probably where all of our prospects are too. But look at the paid advertising. Right, so it's not really in proportion to, we haven't seen that shift completely happen yet. So we think it's like a shift that's turning in motion. We think it's kind of going that route. We probably think also that some of the barriers to this is just thinking about the perceived either expense or the complexity. That setting up LinkedIn paid advertising is rather complicated. Who has the time to do that? Same thing with Google AdWords, right? Nobody has the time to do that. So we think that's probably what's driving that, right? So just from a perspective of what's sitting out there that you could take advantage of, right? So obviously you've got social, you've got LinkedIn. They offer a number of different options for you: text ads, sponsored updates, sponsored email, right? So really kind of depending on what you specialize in, who you're looking to target, and what you're looking to really communicate out. They give you a lot of different options. Excuse me, especially for Twitter as well, same thing. Twitter cards in particular, there's something that, you know, we could explore. There are other things as well, but you know, you've likely heard of some of these, right? Same thing with Facebook. You've probably seen some of that sponsored content. When I was at ExxonMobil, Facebook, you know, ExxonMobil, you know, the division I was in sold motor oil. So kind of a, you know, a little bit of a CPG model there, right? So it was a motor oil, a branded oil. They had a Facebook page. A lot of the materials on there are kind of content that they wanted to put in front of, because they had a lot of brand ambassadors, right, and enthusiasts, you know, gearheads who really enjoyed purchasing oil, and they were very pleased with the Mobile One performance, things like that. So I know the agencies that were in charge of managing the Facebook page were really very concerned when Facebook started to change their model, right? So it became more of a pay-to-play model. On top of that, the only way for you to get your content in front of people, even though they might be a fan, is an algorithm now that is a combination of paid advertising, right? What kind of proportion do you have of sponsored content? But it's also the quality of the content that you're putting out there, and then the extent of that reach, right? So if somebody, you know, does like it, then it's more likelihood for it to show up in your newsfeed. But no longer were they able to rely on the model of like, hey, we've got really good content in here, let's just put it onto our page, and because somebody's liked it, it will show up in their newsfeed, right? So it's constantly taking a step back and taking a look at what's going on and seeing what you can add or supplement, right? So the whole point is to say that you can't rely on, you know, other organizations or other businesses that are kind of providing you these opportunities. You can't rely on them keeping their algorithm or any of their channels the same. It constantly keeps us on our toes, which again, you know, those are the types of things you want to leverage inside of the community as you kind of explore, but just things to think about. Same thing with retargeting. This is particularly important, I think, for associations, again, because you need to know how to get your information out there in context, right? So again, as I said, for you guys, for associations, the world is really, you know, kind of your oyster. It is, there's a lot of stuff that you can do because you create content. You create programs. You're able to craft positioning statements and value propositions based on who you're looking to target. It's a lot easier when you have materials and it's an obvious kind of output. Here's your benefit, right? So it's very easy to kind of get into that and say, I know what my prospects looks like. I know what that persona is. I know what they're interested in. I'm going to craft my materials, and then I'm going to target and say, if you saw this, then I want you to see this, right? So it's very much kind of along those lines. And then, of course, there's Google AdWords. Right, so Google AdWords is a little scary, can be overwhelming, but it's something that's out there. It's kind of the industry standard. You know, there are platforms that are integrated with it, so you don't necessarily have to work inside of Google AdWords itself, right? But it is the easiest thing that you should have at minimum kind of working for you. So I've highlighted some of the things that I want to go through. So again, you know, the intent is not to tell you like how to use all these. You can certainly reach out to us offline. But really kind of want to show you some things that you may not know about that you might want to consider. So I want to start with LinkedIn first. And again, I choose LinkedIn because it is most likely where your prospects are. So we definitely kind of heard that back from the field in the analysis that I'm doing lately with some organizations, essentially saying that, yeah, you know, we're in Twitter and we're on Facebook, but LinkedIn is kind of where we should play because that's where all our people are, which is great to hear because LinkedIn has a lot of data for you to tap into. Right, so LinkedIn offers you a couple of different options, right, from a sponsorship standpoint, from sponsored content updates. Right, so they offer sponsored updates, which is paid content that appears in a member news feed across all devices and inside the app. If you go with a text ad, it doesn't show inside of the mobile app. Right, so again, you're really thinking through now, kind of, here's my prospect, here's my member, my persona, that's supposed to be my future member, that's supposed to be sitting out here on LinkedIn. They're participating in a couple of digital working groups, they're in here some capacity, likely they're on their phone, right? It seems really unlikely that they're constantly on LinkedIn through their desktop. So they're probably on their phone, they're curious to see kind of what the updates are, what's going on with people as they network, and what things might be of interest. So really, you know, kind of in your model and your approach, you know, text ads kind of, you know, go out the door. It's at least what you should do, but it's not what you should focus on. Sponsored updates are interesting because, again, it's a content strategy play, right? So it's recommended for people for organizations who have a strong content strategy behind them, because you're not struggling to create the content anyway. It's part of your content program, so then you can kind of leverage it and put it straight in there, right? So it's really something that you want to think about and works really well for association. I like this diagram because it kind of shows you from LinkedIn's perspective why you need to leverage some of their features from a digital advertising perspective. Right, so again, they understand the same challenge that we as marketers have, right? The whole point is to go to acquire. At the bottom here, we are looking for member acquisition. We are looking to acquire members, vendors, sponsors, whatever it is, we're looking to acquire. So here's our funnel, right? So it kind of tells you and maps for you what their actual sponsorship options are and what those updates look like, right? So kind of where they map up in the funnel. So again, very kind of complicated, or seems like it's complicated, sophisticated, you know, concepts that are kind of boiled down to essentially sponsored updates are kind of your reach, your outreach again. So remember we talked about Twitter, we have those big circles, right? Same thing, right? So if you know all your prospects are sitting out there in LinkedIn somehow, we need to get in front of them. So our first outreach is to use some of those sponsored updates. So we're creating compelling content that has certain items to it to pique their interest. And then they have other options available to you. Sponsored email, which is to kind of really educate, so it's a little bit more personalized. You may have received them already kind of in your email box inside of LinkedIn, where it's, you know, from certain representatives, certain organizations who have paid a little bit more as part of their digital program to customize and craft information or materials that end up straight into your inbox. So it's more like a one-on-one conversation, right? Those are, you know, the intent is to kind of, you know, push, right? So they become familiar with you in the reach area. They're familiar with the content and the type of content you provide. You move them down into the educate portion of the funnel through connecting with them directly, and then you look to nurture them, right? And the nurture part, again, goes back to SEO. So you see how kind of like LinkedIn works at the top of the funnel, if you will. The bottom of the funnel is back on your regular below-the-line properties who do all the work. Because likely now you have people who are looking at all the materials that are happening on site of LinkedIn. They've probably found your company page. They've become a follower. So they have additional insight into what's going on. They've likely found some of the groups that your members are participants of as well. Hopefully you've kind of made that connection and shared some of that information in your sponsored updates. And they probably looked you up on other digital properties such as your website. They've searched for you or something, right? So hopefully you kind of see how the whole circle fits together. There's no way for me to get them to the SEO nurture acquire bottom of the funnel without me reaching out to them first. And so LinkedIn does the heavy lifting for me, kind of, from that standpoint. I don't have to go out and buy lists. I can't do that. That's the big no-no. You certainly can't buy lists today, right? So what do I do, right? So LinkedIn, sponsorship from LinkedIn, that's a nice way to kind of get in front of the people who are part of my tribe. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense of why I think LinkedIn is something that you might want to explore. It's certainly very kind of detailed from that perspective. Especially kind of, I like how they show you how you go down that funnel. So we have two types of sponsored content on LinkedIn as well, right? So they've got sponsored updates and they've got direct sponsored content. So these sponsored updates, they appear on your company page to your followers, right? The ones that are already following you, and they can be amplified to your audiences in your paid program, right? So you've got content that shows up on your company page. You in turn can take that content and then select additional targeted groups based on the demographics and all the data they provide you with and make sure it shows up kind of in their feed. Then you've got direct sponsored content. So it doesn't appear on the company or showcase page, but it's personalized based on your targeting, and you can create multiple versions and that goes straight into your prospects member feed or their news feed. All right, so different options for what you're trying to communicate. Usually, typically, kind of in a program, we'll see a balance of both, right? If you've got a campaign or a program that you've got to get eyes on as quickly as possible, you want to go the direct sponsored content route first, because you got to get as many eyes as possible. The sponsored updates are still reliant on the people who've already found you on your company level for whatever reason they've subscribed to you. They may be members, they may not be, but it's just a different flavor. So you definitely you can definitely start to see how you push them further along the funnel and kind of further engage with them. So from LinkedIn's perspective, they gave us a couple of tips on kind of where it's the most effective content. What does that look like, right? So again, they're pointing back to things that you as marketers are fairly, I think that's pretty obvious to everyone, but it doesn't hurt to kind of reiterate. What they're asking is that essentially your content be valuable. So it contains information which helps prospects to learn something new, right? So again, you're tapping into that education play because this is why most people are gathered on LinkedIn, to network and to really learn from each other and learn from that community base. So again, as associations, you're in a position to really kind of provide that type of information. It won't be very hard to do. What they also say is they want your content to be relevant. So they want your content to be the right message for the right audience, right? So here's an example on the side, and it tells you kind of on the other, on the left, it's just showing you here's your audience. You've handpicked your audience. You've based it on, job function. You can base it on where they are. You can base it on their fields of study or kind of where they studied and what skills they might have or are looking to get, right? And so based on that, you've created something that might be that would be helpful. You're doing engagement, you're doing education. As an IT manager, you should be reading articles like these, blah, 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 right? So it's giving you a call to action where, the expectation is already set that this is very interesting, valuable information, and it's relevant to me because, I am an IT manager, right? So this ad or this sponsored content wouldn't show up it's unlikely to show up in a digital marketer's feed, but it will show up in an IT manager's feed, right? So it's just knowing kind of some of the nuances and making sure that you're demonstrating to whoever's looking at it that you have stuff that is very specific to them. In addition, they're saying that the content needs to be strong in tone and voice, right? So what that means is make sure you're aligned to your brand. You definitely want to make sure that the prospect knows that you're inviting them to learn more. And anything that you put there needs to have some sort of call to action, right? You take action, make sure it's concise and to the point so that they get it, right? Whether it's an image or it's the pain point that they're feeling, you have something that can solve that problem. You definitely want to kind of put it out there. Because again, it is sponsored content. So I think one of the hardest things is we are great at creating content. It's really hard to narrow it down and put it into 40 characters or so. Right, so again, you really don't want to think about what's the full value and how do I communicate, phrase it in such a way that people get it and they know that I get them what their pain points are. So you can start to see some of the overlaps, hopefully, in the inbound methodology as well. right? Again, it's going back to knowing who those strangers are, who they're supposed to fit into in terms of persona, what their pain points are, what their user journey is as they go through that funnel, right? Things like that, right? So you can start to see it's all kind of overlapping. So the effort that you do to create those personas doesn't go out the window. You know, the work that you do on your personas always stay with you. You will always, it looks like, you know, for everything that we'll cover, it will seem to you that, you know, those personas are key cornerstone for a lot of things, a lot of touch points. So again, you know, most effective content, you know, I mean, it comes down to the underlying message here is that content is king, right? So again, it's not about the technology platform. It's not about which digital advertising vehicle you use. It's about the fact that you have the right content to solve the pain points for your prospect persona. And really, that's what that comes down to. So again, most organizations typically struggle with creating the content. You know, I guess other industries, not the association market. The association market, you're in a unique position. You have a lot of materials, right? Your challenge now is to pick the right material for the right vehicle and figuring out kind of what is that portfolio, what does your digital marketing portfolio look for from that standpoint. So another thing I wanted to kind of share with you to make sure everybody knew about this was retargeting. So you may know AdRoll, you may have heard of them. They are a retargeting, they offer a retargeting platform. So retargeting, you may have heard it called remarketing as well, right? So essentially it's a form of online advertising, I like this definition, that keeps your brand and content in front of bounced traffic, right? So bounced traffic is that traffic that came to your website for some reason and then left, right? So it's trying to get in front of your users who have already somehow in some capacity visited one of your digital vehicles, typically your website. So I like the diagram because it kind of tells you here's where you insert yourself, you know, from that perspective, right? And this is more from the conversion angle, right? So it's not so much about the it's not about like getting in front of the lead. It's about taking that lead and pulling them a little bit further down your funnel so you can close them. So you've got the potential customer who's in blue, they visit your site, a cookie drops on their application, on their browser, they leave without doing anything else, right? There's some sort of, you know, perhaps there's a cart abandonment. They do something and then they leave, they bounce, right? So they leave without doing anything, and later they continue their web experience on other sites, on other properties. So this is where retargeting starts to come in, right? So for all those paid areas where there are ads available, you know, for whatever platforms and whatever channels that they've made arrangements with, they will see that you visited your site. Therefore, they will start to put content together that is relevant to your site and to your organization, but they are not on your site. So again, it's a way to bring you back, right, and kind of keep that experience closed as a loop, right? So again, they click on your ad, you end up going back to the site, you know, and they eventually convert, right? So there's a statistic that most retargeting organizations will quote, and they'll say something along the lines of 2% of visitors who come to the site will result in conversions. They will do what it is you want them to do. So either, you know, buy a product, download something, view something, sign up for something. The 98% will leave, right? So they'll come to your site, but they'll leave without doing anything. So what this does is it puts you in front of that 98%, right? It gives you another shot in which you to convert. So the reason I bring this to your attention, right, something that you might want to consider as part of your above the line portfolio, is because it allows you to focus your spend on prospects that are already familiar with their brand, right? So remember, we talked about the difference, right? So the biggest challenge is to get people, you know, people who don't know you to be aware of you. But then you've got people who are aware of you now. You still don't know much about them. They are aware of you, but they don't do anything. We were unable to do anything else with them. So what this does is it helps you to increase that conversion. It does not help you drive prospects to your site. And I think that's often a confusion point, or to say that, oh yeah, we use that. We have ads all over the place. It's different, right? It's not about driving prospects to your site. It's about closing the loop and making sure that those conversions happen for the prospects that have already been driven to your site from your LinkedIn efforts, right? From your Twitter card efforts, from other stuff that you've been doing. It's about taking them and converting them into leads, because it's one thing to generate leads, right? The next challenge that comes on the marketer's list is to convert those leads, right? So I think this is an interesting way in which to do it. It's becoming more and more popular, right? And again, it works best as part of that larger digital strategy. You want to think about it and put it in context and in conjunction with what you're doing for inbound as well as outbound marketing lead gen strategies. It cannot exist on its own while you do nothing else, right? So again, I don't want to say you put all your eggs in one basket, but it's definitely something that you want to think about because it does help you focus on that. And it does help you kind of close the loop, if you will. Another thing I wanted to touch on, something you may have heard us talk about in the past, is an application that we've developed called Intelligent Contextual Email. And this is more from a kind of a concept standpoint, just to really think about, the ways in which you communicate out to people, right? Even to prospects. Let's say you've generated some leads. How are you going to communicate to them? Probably the best way, the first introduction will be via email, right? So in that email, you want to think about what can I provide that will demonstrate that I know this person, and therefore, not only do I know them, I know what they're looking for, and we have that information for them, whatever it is. If it's a program, if it's a product, if it's a webinar, whatever it is, we have something that is of value to them that they would be interested in, right? So what Intelligent Contextual Email does is essentially it takes all of those behavior data points and starts to map them into it allows you kind of, through use of tagging, you can essentially kind of say that, if the person did the following things, they're likely to be interested in X, Y, Z, right? So you are applying the context instead of sending them everything, because likely you probably have one or two shots before they're gone, right? And so you have one or two chances to convert them, right? And if email is the first time and the first way you're going to reach out to them, you want to think about, like, what can I put in the email that, one, demonstrates where I know who I got them from, right? So clearly, if I have the data from LinkedIn, I know they connected with someone we know at LinkedIn. They're part of a network that we commonly interact with. They clicked on one of our calls to action to download an ebook or something. They want to be able to kind of be in a position where you can take that data and hyper-personalize everything. So this is an example of what the New Jersey Society of CPAs does. Essentially, they offer a course certification. So often, they used to field a lot of calls, right? So towards the end of the semester, towards the end of the year, a lot of people would call them up and say, how many credits do I have left? How many do I, what do I need to take to complete the certification? Right, so what they did is they put together an automated email that taps into all this data that's sitting inside of their AMS, their LMS, like all their different data systems, and it puts it together in a way that makes it very clear. Right, you've completed everything up until this point. You have the following credits that are required, and in addition to that, here are all the events that are happening. Here are all the webinars that are happening within this time frame that you can take to go ahead and finish your certification. So you think about it, if somebody was kind of coming in, not really knowing much about your organization, they're kind of interested in what you put in front of them. If you were to base their behavior on kind of what they've interacted you with, you could put something together that essentially would close the deal, right? You could say that, hey, we noticed that you're interested in this, you downloaded this ebook. It's a financial benchmark document. So again, we have an event that's coming up that's in your area. That's a live event. It's early bird registration is happening. If you were to take advantage of member pricing, you would save not only early bird plus something else. So you get very specific about what you want to put in the communication to make it as easy as possible for them to say, sign me up, or sure, that sounds good, or yes, I'm interested. Right, so just things to think about, right? So again, from that standpoint, you really want to think about what you have already. Think about it from that contextual standpoint, and then think about the vehicles that you have working for you. Again, right, it doesn't always have to be, above the line, right? Something like this is considered below the line. It's an investment in a platform, in a kind of technology that leverages stuff that you already do. You already have to create this content for the website. And so therefore, you're able to kind of leverage it in a way that has it work for you as well, right? Either on the acquisition side or at least on the conversion side. So things that you really want to be thinking about. So I think the last thing I just wanted to pull out here was Google AdWords. It can be very overwhelming. You come in here and you're like, what is this? What am I doing? Like, how am I supposed to do this, right? So you don't have to be scared. Try it out. Again, Google AdWords is not for everyone, but you should have at minimum a little bit of stuff running, right? So it's great to have your SEO, your search engine optimization strategy working for you, absolutely. But again, that is a little bit reliant on the search engine. I think we've been intrinsically trained to say that paid advertisements on Google are bad, right? That triangle where the heat map and the clicker. You want to be in the top, but you want to be part of the organic search. You don't want to be part of the ads, right? I don't know that is, I think that transformation, that's going to happen also. We're going to see something happen, and that's going to shift as well. You should kind of be there tweaking some of your Google AdWords as well, right? You want people to find you, right? And if it's anything that kind of helps to amplify that, that's what you want to think about. So just something to think about. So then, to recap, I don't think I've outlined stuff that's surprising to anyone. I don't think it's anything that's new. Really, the intent here was to kind of make sure that you were aware of all of the different things that were happening inside of some of these vehicles that you could leverage and you could tap into, right? So it's really kind of making sure that you really want to think about spending a little bit, again, depending on what your budget looks like, right? Some of that spend should go towards digital advertising, essentially to generate your leads. If you've been tasked with generating leads, lead gen is a yearly goal, or if it's a quarterly goal, you have a number of it hanging over your head, you definitely want to think about that. It is the fastest way and probably the only way to get in front of people who don't know your brand or your association and what you do, right? So again, you're looking for that reach, right? And you can't buy lists. So you have to think about different ways. So digital advertising is definitely that way. You want to amplify, and essentially it amplifies everything that you do below the line. So it gets you those leads quickly. It's not to say that if you were to continue with your best practices and do everything that the inbound marketing methodology is saying, right? You're optimizing your blog posts, you're optimizing your landing pages, you're making sure that inbound links are on your pages, you're having legitimate kind of authorized links on your pages themselves, you're optimizing those keywords. It's not to say that that won't happen, but it's at a different time frame and a different pace. Right, so if you are looking to generate leads quickly, right, you do definitely want to think about digital advertising. And then the last message is, don't feel like you have to go it alone, right? There are organizations out there. You can certainly lean on us. We're more than happy to help you put together a program, kind of strategize with you, and then execute on the program. It takes time, right? So to fine-tune, to do that A/B testing, to fine-tune, to find the right image, it's not like you don't have the content, but you do need someone with a little bit of time to sit there, figure it out, put it in place, and then monitor it, right? It's nothing worse to kind of say that you put the spend there and then you don't have the time to go back there and see how it's doing. Because likely you can make some additive slight shifts that in turn will result in additional benefits, right? So things to think about definitely. So hopefully this was helpful for you. And I'll leave you with a quote that I think is, I think it's a good quote. It's from Seth Godin, who says that our job is to connect with people and to interact with them in a way that leaves them better than we found them and more able to get to where they'd like to go. So again, I think that's a perfect message for associations kind of in the market today, especially tasked with what they need to do. I think it's a natural fit. So I think it's a good mantra to live by. So if you have any questions, certainly feel free to put them in the chat window, to reach out to us offline. We would love to kind of talk more about digital marketing as a whole, as well as digital advertising. Again, there is a ton of stuff you could do with HighRoad as one platform. Again, it's not to say that there is one platform out there that does it all, but there are a lot of things that you could do. So we're always looking for case studies and scenarios of things of what you need to accomplish and kind of helping our organizations get there. So if there aren't any other questions, I will let you guys go and give you about 10 minutes back to your lunch. Thank you again for joining us. We will connect again. We hope that you'll show up next month as well. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.